Welcome to Middle Fingers Up, the show where we hold our heads high and our middle fingers higher. I'm your host, Kieran McKay. Today, I feel like every episode I keep starting with, today I'm especially excited, and that's because I genuinely am. Today I have a little bit of a different kind of excitement, maybe like a happy kid on Christmas morning, because one of my besties, Meena Natt, is here sitting with me, my girlfriend, all the way from Surrey, BC. We've been friends for friggin' forever, and we'll talk about that in a sec. And I've been waiting for this day for so long, waiting for her to get here. And she flew in last night for her visit, and we're sitting in the studio right now this morning, and I'm especially excited to be sitting across the room with you. Welcome, buddy. Thank you for agreeing to be here with me today.
Thank you so much. I'm super excited. Very happy. Thanks for having me.
I don't know if you remember, but when we were on the phone planning your visit, because prior to COVID, you've been coming down from Boxing Day to New Year's every year. Mm-hmm. And COVID happened. We couldn't see each other. And so this is like your first trip back, even though it's not, Christmas yet, but your first trip back. And so I'm so excited that we're getting our routines back and seeing each other because it's been forever. Mm-hmm. I'm going to do my best not to cry in this episode because I just am so grateful that I'm sitting across the room here with you. So when we talked about it, were you, I'm like, hey, I'm starting this podcast. Do you want to come on and talk with me? And I were sitting in this little studio.
I know.
What are you thinking?
Well, your studio it's beautiful. I didn't know what to expect.
Yeah.
I've always in my heart wanted to, share the struggles that I have and in my experiences in life, but I never ever knew how I would do it.
Oh, I know you wanted to write a book at one point.
I did.
And I still think you should.
I've never started that book.
We will. Maybe after today we'll start it.
Maybe.
I'll go on book tour with you.
Sure.
I'll be your wardrobe consultant.
Yes. I would look so good if you were my stylist.
I'll bring your coffees like I do every time you visit. Yeah. My little princess that shows up.
Oh, I love it here. I do.
Well, we love having you here.
Thank you.
So I do this little segment. Today's episode 6, believe it or not. And the little segment that I'm trying is just starting with something that my guests would like to put their middle fingers up to. So I'm going to ask you, what do you want to put your middle fingers up to, buddy?
The first thing that comes to my mind, I'd put my middle fingers up to IBS.
Oh, irritable bowel syndrome. Yeah. Okay.
Yes. And it's something I've been super embarrassed to talk about.
Yeah.
For 20 years.
Wow.
And in my 20s and 30s, you would never have heard me talking about it.
No, I didn't know for the longest time what was happening. I knew something was going on because, things would happen.
Yeah.
But I didn't know that that's what it was. Did you even know that's what it was at that time?
I did. I had it for about a year before I figured it out. I was 20.
Yeah.
So in my 20s and 30s, I was just so embarrassed of it. I just never talked to anybody about it. And hey, I'm 41 in 2 days, and it's like,
you were.
Fuck it. It's IBS.
IBS. So why today? Why are you putting your middle fingers up to that today?
Because it's a struggle every single day.
Yeah.
To manage it. I have to plan my day according to, because it's unpredictable.
Okay.
You have no idea when it's going to hit you. You could be sitting in the car in traffic. You could be sitting in the movie theater. Mm-hmm. You could be sitting in a beautiful studio about to record a podcast.
Oh, man.
Right? You don't know when it's going to hit.
Yeah.
So it's a struggle, but I've learned to accept it and work with it.
So is there something that triggers that for you, or like you said, you don't know when it's going to happen. So do you kind of have a sense? Like, is there something that's triggering?
Yes, food is number one.
Okay.
Like you can manage this with like eating the way you're supposed to.
So the wine we had last night wasn't helpful.
It's interesting because it really depends on where I am. So when I come to visit you, I don't have IBS attacks.
Okay, you've mentioned this before, like when you've been here. Oh my God, like I feel like I can eat anything when I'm here. Meena calls my husband Kari Paji. They have a wonderful relationship. So Kari Paji cooks for you all the time. Yeah. So why do you think that is? Like, why is it when you're here or at wherever it is that it doesn't flare up versus when it does?
I've thought about that, and like, for example, I don't drink coffee.
Yeah.
And I'll come here and I'll enjoy coffee in the morning.
Oh.
You know, I don't know if it's the city. I don't know if it's because I'm in a new city and I feel free here.
Because you're like on holidays?
No, it's I love home, of course, but it's like you don't know. Everyone knows everyone.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Here, I feel like when I go out, it's just a different feeling. Yeah. It's more of a peaceful feeling for me.
Okay, it's not that everyone knows everyone. It's everyone knows you. As I've always said to people, I'm like, Meena's always growing up in high school. Everyone just knows you. So maybe that's part of the problem for you.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
And I think that's why it doesn't happen so much here, because I'm not looking over my shoulder.
Yeah.
There are certain foods you can't eat. The quantity of food matters, and how fast or slow you eat your food. So it's and environment, number 2. So food and environment.
Yeah.
One other example is if I feel like I'm being late for something.
Yeah.
I'll feel an attack coming on.
Oh, like you're just like super anxious.
Yeah. So
that's rough.
That's me trying to manage that every day.
I'm going to put my middle fingers up to IBS with you, because I just can't imagine, like, that's just like you're always bringing this younger sibling that you don't want to hang out with you everywhere you go. Yeah. Because you don't know what's going to happen, what they're going to say, you know, and so that's rough, dude. And I appreciate that you can recognize the times where it doesn't flare up and, you know, you're like, okay, this is, you know, how do I have more of this time?
Yes.
Personally, I think you should just move to Calgary. So, you know, let's keep considering that for you.
It's an option.
We have a lot of space for you. So, you know, let's talk about that one again. Okay. I'm learning so much about you in the last 2 minutes about IBS, and it blows my mind how long we've known each other. 30 years coming up. We have to celebrate this.
Next year.
Meena's adorable. At our 25 years, she wanted to do something special, and I think you came out here and we had a whole celebration. And now our 30 years, so you like to remind me, our 30 years is coming up. So 30 years of friendship, that's incredible.
It's a gift.
You know, and here you are talking about IBS and all that, and I know you have IBS issues, but like the details of it, because we don't even always talk about that.
No.
So it's amazing after all these years how you can learn about each other constantly. There's so much going on all the time.
And I'm constantly learning about it. Like, the moment I stopped being embarrassed about it and talking about it, I've managed it way better. Yeah. And it is manageable. It's very difficult because social situations are very difficult. Yeah. But it's manageable. Yeah. And I'm still working on it. Yeah. Yeah.
Does that like, just going back to that for a second, does IBS have a connection to like anxiety?
Yes, because when this first started happening, it caused me anxiety, especially social anxiety. Yeah. So because I didn't know when it was going to happen, I would get super anxious before going to someone's house. Yeah. Right? Yeah. Because going to dinner at someone's house was my worst nightmare. Yeah. Right? Restaurants. Right. So basically anywhere I'm being social, right? So that it's hand in hand. If you have IBS, I am sure like you will you have anxiety.
Yeah.
Because you're anxious about being in traffic, right? You have to plan your route out.
Oh my God.
You have to plan theater seats, like to make sure
close to the exit,
right? So that you're near a bathroom.
Yeah.
Hiking, I would love to hike.
Right.
You know, nothing calms me more than being in nature.
It's true.
But I have to find out where, if I would have an attack,
where the biggest tree is to hide behind. There's Meena with her toilet paper roll. Don't mind me, guys. That's a good IBS commercial.
You know, I thought about packing like a bag with like extra
wipes and poopery you're spraying in the air. Hey, you gotta do what you gotta do, man.
Oh yeah,
you know, like I've had to poop on a mountain in Peru when we're climbing Machu Picchu. You know, peed myself. Like you gotta do what you gotta do, man.
Yeah,
gotta dig a hole, put it in there, and don't look back. Keep looking forward.
Don't look back
ever.
Yeah.
So. Oh man, buddy, that's rough. Do you think that some of that anxiety that came along with IBS? Do you think some of that was already there beforehand, like growing up? Because you said that you started to discover this in your 20s, right? So were you always having these issues like prior to that, and then you were able to label it in your 20s, or was it in your 20s when it sort of started for you?
Yeah, good question. So the more that I read about it now, and learn about it, it comes about and it wakes in your body at a very stressful time in your life. So when this came forth in my body and I started getting the symptoms, it was always going to happen to me, but it started at a time in my life that was very stressful. So that made sense to me, right? I remember being in school and having to take the SkyTrain, and then every single time I ate, my stomach hurt and I couldn't keep it in. I was like, what is going on? And it just didn't get better. My mom, like God bless her, she helped me so much. She made up a bunch of food that did work for a little bit, but I got super anxious in class. Then I started just trying to figure out like, what is this? And finally then a doctor told me, it's like, oh, it's IBS, right?
What's that like, you know? Like, do you think before you label it or get a name behind it, you like kind of feel like this is just you going through it? Did you see anyone else? Or because like you said, you didn't really talk about it, so you're like, what the hell's wrong with me in some ways, because you have no idea that it's IBS. You think something else is happening to you?
I thought I was the only person in the 5 years ago. Just 5 years ago, I realized.
5 years ago, dude.
Yeah, when I started talking about it, I would say I started getting into groups with people who have this, reading books, and I'm like, oh my goodness, like if I knew about this, that you know, you're in your own little world in your 20s, and because I was so embarrassed to talk about it, no one knew. I didn't know to look up and like look for communities that are talking about this. But it made me feel so much more normal. Like, hey, I can relate to that.
Totally.
No one else can, planning out your route beforehand. And,
right.
You know?
Yeah, exactly. Like now that I think back, I've had some other friends that couldn't go places because of the drive. Like I remember a really good friend of mine, Jenny, shout out, we were getting ready to go to my stag because I got married out in Surrey. So Whistler, you know, was the place that you go for your stags back then. And Jenny couldn't come out. She couldn't drive. And I remember like she didn't really talk. And I don't know if she had that, but I remember her saying like, I either have to drive, I can't be in the passenger seat. I have another friend that's like that too. Like she's like, I'll drive because there's like this anxiety. So I wonder if now that I'm looking back at some people, like, is that part of this IBS world? Is, you know, do they know that was anxiety something else? Because there's even for me, like I have to like pee 100 times before I leave the house, but that's because you know, just peeing and stuff. But it's interesting when you're doing these things all the time, then they're your routine, and then you talk to someone else and they're like, that totally happens to me. Because I'm like, yeah, there's a few people that I know that have to plan their route, you know, don't really like I said, can't get in the passenger seat, have to be driving.
I always have to be driving.
See, you too, right?
I've always been the driver.
But you've always loved driving. You grew up with brothers that had the cool trucks and the Jimmy. Remember the Jimmy?
The Jimmy.
Right? You know, it was Cherokee too. Did you have a Cherokee?
Cherokee and Trans Am and Mustang.
What was the pink truck?
There was F-150s.
F-150s, yeah. Like, I was so afraid to drive. And you in high school, you were always the one that had the car. You were driving, and I remember you'd always drive us to McDonald's, A&W, and stuff. Remember when we used to drive around in the trunk of the car?
Oh my gosh, I'm so embarrassed. That time, the trunk of the car is something I'll never forget, because I reversed the car back into the smoke pit, and I'm like, I'm going to open the trunk and let these people know that my friends wanted to be in the trunk, or maybe it was my idea. I can't remember. Probably mine.
I can't remember. I know. I can't remember whose friggin' idea was it to say Meena drive while we hang out in the trunk, and then you backed it up, and all the kids at the smoke pit, like, there's all the white kids at the smoke pit too, and you pop the trunk, and I'm in the fucking trunk of your car, and they're like, what are they doing? But everybody in high school always had this understanding for us.
Oh no, they did.
They're like, oh, it's Meena and Kira. And then we had another friend at the time too. Yeah. The three of us, and they'd always have an understanding. I was actually reading my yearbook the other day, and because there's where my mom and dad live in Chilliwack, there's this family that lives there, and the guy, he went to high school with us, and he remembered me, which blew my mind because nobody remembers me in high school. And so I was trying to look him up in the yearbook, because I'm like, why? I feel like I remember a lot of people. I'm like, why don't I remember him? So I'm looking it up, and then I read this, when people sign your yearbook, it was such a thing back then. And I remember somebody's like, oh, you, Meena, and, so-and-so, our other friend, the three of you, my goal in life is to always come and sit next to three of you and break the three of you up, because you're always sitting there. You know when we used to sit on the steps across the cafeteria?
Always.
And people would be like, what are you guys doing? Because we'd sit there, we'd have a 70-minute lunch, and we'd sit there quietly just people watching. Yeah. And friends would come sit with us and then be like, okay, good talk, and get up and leave. And they're like, you guys are so weird. And we're like, this is how we talk. We just sit there and people stare and learn, and I don't know how we even got here, but that's 30 years. So
I know.
The trunk. I don't know why we did that.
I don't know whose idea that was. I don't.
We did stupid, I
don't.
Like naive, stupid shit back then. Kids were being cool and having sex and doing acid and all that, and here we are saying, "Holy shit, let's." In the back of you, didn't you have a Honda Civic?
It was a Honda Civic. I remember coming back from lunch one time, and we were racing with another guy.
Oh, my God.
And what happened was I had to win, of course, but I ended up passing a car. The car was a teacher.
Oh.
I remember we parked the car. He took my license. He's like, go get it from I go, the principal does not like me.
Not unless if it was Mr. Inrig, because Mr. Inrig, our vice principal, loved us.
Inrig, but Messiah did.
Oh, Messiah. Oh, my gosh.
His goal in life was to kick me out.
He's like the Captain Underpants. I don't know if you know that series. He's like that principal, right?
And then he gave my license to Messiah that she's racing down the street. Anyways, we have a ton of these stories. Yeah. That, wow.
Yeah, just like weird stuff we would do. Like fun stuff, but weird stuff.
But at least you were focused in your studies.
I was focused in my studies.
At least you did those things, but you worked hard in school.
Well, I didn't know better. I just, you grow up with immigrant parents, as you know, and their biggest goal in life is for us to have a better life than they did. Yeah. And it's like education. And my grandpa, my dad's dad, right? I always say he was my soulmate. My grandpa, Dada, was so highly educated coming from India, and worked his ass off picking daffodils, and had to cut his turban because you can't have a turban and come to Canada and work. Yeah. And he had his master's back home. He was this accountant back home. And so anyways, he gets his, does his work, does all this work, gets his job, and is a CFO of a not-for-profit. And I think that work that he was doing and watching him was like, oh, I want to make you proud. I want to do that. And that's sort of what got me into one of the reasons why I got into wanting to go back to school, like go to counts, because I went to university literally the minute that I left. Remember high school, right?
I was so proud of you.
But Mr. Payne, this is the second time now I've brought up Mr. Payne. Do you remember our guidance counselor, Mr. Payne? I don't know if you remember him, but his name is Mr. Payne, which blows my mind. And he was our guidance counselor.
Okay.
He had mentioned this in episode 3 too. Like because I had a traumatic thing happen in grade 9 and I didn't know how to process it. I was very afraid to tell my family. We had come back from India. We had done a family trip to India, and I was actually sexually assaulted in India twice by 2 different family members. Oh no. And it was really hard to tell my family. I told my uncle, and he was really supportive, but I was afraid to tell my mom, and I didn't want, just because I didn't want to, you're afraid. We grew up in a culture of fear, and then we're afraid about like what are people going to say? We don't want to do any more damage. Right. And so I didn't know how to process it. So I came back from India, and Mr. Payne was like the second reason why I wanted to get into counseling. And, because for us growing up, like, mental health wasn't a thing. Like, you're talking about your IBS, trying to label this thing that happens to you from a physical level, and, there's a label for it. Shitting your pants has a label, right? Like, you're not crazy. But for mental health, something bad's gotten into you, you're crazy, something's wrong. Like, it's not what happened to you, it's what's wrong with you. And I going to school and doing a little work that didn't last a while, like, I appreciate that we're starting to change this language in the world of trauma, that something's happened to someone to make them the way they are.
For sure. Right?
Like, it's not, she's not just that way, or he's not a douche that way. Those kids didn't start doing drugs because they were bored one day. Those kids started doing drugs because something happened to them, right? And so I think seeing that counselor and seeing my grandpa doing the work that he was doing and having all these things happening personally, it was like, what the fuck? Like, how do we start to talk about these things? And, like, I don't know. I think a lot of things. I'm one of how many? I'm sure you have stories too. Like, there's so many things happen to us growing up that catch up to us as we start to make sense, right, of it. And we're like, oh, I part of me is this way because of this thing. So why am I hiding it? Like, how do I start talking about these things because it's connected to me?
Yeah, thanks for sharing. I did not know that. Thank you for sharing.
I don't even know why it came up. This is the thing about you. You just, like, you have this calming presence and voice. Like, you just, like, you're like Santa Claus, man, but in the non-creepy way. Like, you just have this way that you listen that I just hope one day I could get close to that listening ear that you bring.
No, I appreciate you sharing that. I did not know that.
Yeah.
Like you said, 30 years of friendship. And, there's still so much to learn, right?
Yeah.
About each other that makes not only our relationship stronger, but anybody out there that is holding something in, especially anybody, but especially anybody in our community, because these things are not talked about. So good for you for talking to whoever, any family member, because back then in grade 9, there's no way.
Yeah, there's no way. There's no way there was room for any of those kind of conversations, way. Like, we just, it's weird because on one hand it's normalized, like, it's normal for some of these things to happen, but in many ways it's not normalized because there's just no space to talk about it. We're also afraid all the time. Our parents are afraid for lots of reasons. We're afraid, and so we're just, I don't know, like, shoving these things under our metaphorical carpet of oh god. And I think this is like honestly, genuinely, like, a big part of this passion project is I just think that if we have one person listening to us, or we write it down and can later remind ourselves to talk to one person, like it just connects us. It's like this chain that just connects, because you even said earlier, like, you now are part of a group where people share a similar diagnosis like yours, and you can talk to those people. And when you were 20, did you even think that would happen? Right?
No way, because it wasn't happening to anybody that was around me.
That
I knew of. But you are absolutely right when you say, in order to truly understand someone, they say go back and learn everything about their childhood, everything. And so that was an aha moment for me. So what I did is I did that for myself.
Yeah.
And I had to rewind and go back.
Right.
Because when you asked, like, how did you first know, like, you're feeling anxious or have IBS or whatever, it comes from childhood.
Yeah.
You know, from things that we have endured that are literally stuck in our physical body.
Yeah.
Right? It eventually comes out sooner or later, like it does. And you're an adult by then.
Yeah.
And everyone copes with these memories or
right.
in different ways.
Totally. And some work really hard to forget them.
Oh yes, their whole life purpose is to forget, right?
Yeah. Which saddens me.
Yeah.
It saddens me because as a child, no one asked for these terrible things to happen. And you have no language. You can't make sense of it. Like I read this note one day about when a child comes up to you and says, come look at this thing I made, or can we play with this toy? And as an adult, when we respond to them with not right now, or I'm busy, or just go to bed, or whatever we say, we're missing this opportunity that this child doesn't have the capacity to say, I had a really hard day today, Mom. Right. Or, hey, brother, or hey, grandma, I'm really scared right now because, whatever. And I think we teach kids indirectly, not because we want to, but it happens, to just shut it down, right? Shut it off. Right? Yeah. And it's the simplest thing of like, can you come play with me? And now as like you said, we're growing, we're just becoming more and more, not necessarily comfortable, but like we're allowing it to happen more and more. It comes more naturally to just shut it down. Those thoughts that keep popping in our head are reminding us that, hey, you should probably go back and talk to little Kieran about that thing that happened when you were 14, or you should probably go back and talk to little Kieran about that thing that happened when you were 6, like whatever, and then when we try to forget it, I think what happens is like we forget like who we're becoming. So because we're like almost like few layers away from it, and I don't know, that just saddens me because I think we're just, as humans, we're so worthy to be in a place where we can function well. And when we miss those opportunities, it fucks with you, and addictions and all sorts of things start to supplement that, right? I'll cope with this bad thing this way,
for sure.
And you and I have talked a lot about that over the 30 years, because while we met when we were 12 years old with my thick ass unibrow mustache, and we went into high school together, and you went to a couple different high schools, but you always came back. And, I think after high school, we just we had different paths, right? Like you said, I went to school, you had some other things. And we weren't always, for 30 years, we haven't been like connected all the way. No. Like we've had to go do our thing for a bit and then come back to each other.
Yes.
Right. And then when we come back to each other, I think it's like talking about some of these things. And you and I have talked a lot about that, like some of the things that we've been trying to make sense of, especially in our 20s.
Yes.
Like now we're adults all of a sudden, and I'm just supposed to be okay with all this shit this baggage I'm bringing along, and then God forbid you're getting married because you're bringing this I guess is like not this baggage that you haven't dealt with to this relationship. And so was that partner, and
2 people.
Right. And again, then we forget, we're like, what's wrong with you? Not what happened to you.
Right.
How did you get this way?
Yeah.
What would you go back and tell little Meena if you could, in your little journey? What's one thing you would go back and tell her?
Oh, I would tell her that you're going to be okay. I've done a lot of inner child healing, a lot of inner child work.
Yeah.
And going back and literally talking to that little girl, hugging her, holding her, talking to her, and boy, does it work. For me, it really works.
So what is this? What's this inner child? Like, what are you talking about? Did you go see someone, or like, what do you mean you went back and did this work?
I first started, so self-healing, okay?
Yeah.
I've started that path, I would say, when I turned 30.
Okay.
When I when I met my, I would call him my mentor. I don't know what I would call him, but he's my friend, he's my mentor, but he started off as my trainer. As soon as I met him, I would say my self-healing journey started, right? I slowed down the booze, and then I'm like, I had to be more awake than...
Put the Alizé away?
Drunk. Huh? Yeah, I just put the bottle away and then realized I better figure this out.
Was drinking a problem for you, Meena?
It was a problem where I wouldn't say that I was an alcoholic, no, but I would say it was a problem for sure. I was abusing alcohol, 100%. And I was drinking to the point that I would want to black myself out, yes. But I started just wanting to heal myself. I wanted to be happy. I wanted to have a drink because I was feeling happy and not because I wanted to numb myself out. So I got into inner child. At first when I heard the term, I'm like, what is that? So my journey started with hypnotherapy. Okay. That was amazing. Amazing. And with the right therapist. Right. And, it was life-changing, and that's when it started.
What is hypnotherapy?
So basically, we have all these memories stored in our subconscious mind, right? So think of it as a computer, or think of a chalkboard. You have a whole bunch of stuff written on the chalkboard. It's very messy, right? So think of an eraser, and then you're like erasing the chalkboard to make it clear. Okay. So that's what you're doing with your subconscious mind. So everything that has happened to us, especially when you're a child, okay, or even as a teenager, we don't want to think about those things. Right. So we store it in a place in our mind where we're not always thinking about it, right? Yeah. So those memories are stored. Your behavior comes from those situations you went through. Right. Right? It directs your behavior.
All behavior is meaning.
In your adulthood. And especially your relationships. Right? It comes up in relationships. Not only with a partner, but like parents, brothers, whatever, right? And he led me through. So it's not like what we think it is, where someone's hypnotizing you to do funny things.
Yeah, because that's what hypno. And for some reason, I think water. I think like it's hypnotherapy is like something in the water. I don't know why.
No. They guide you. So you're sitting on a comfortable couch, right? Yeah. A professional guides you to close your eyes and takes you. They read a script and they take you into a deep meditation. So you're not sleeping.
And that works?
It works because it's guided. Meditation is not easy if you're starting, right? If you're a beginner. But with guided hypnotherapy, it's easy to kind of really relax your mind and body. Okay. Once I did that, and he had me totally under, and I remember like I could open my eyes and get out of it if I wanted to, but I didn't want to. I went with it. Okay. You have to be open, like kind of open to it as well. It may be easier. It depends on if you are highly suggestible. That's what they call it. So if you are highly suggestible, that means it's easy to have you, go into a very deep meditative state. Right. And he had asked me, where are you right now? And I was probably 5 or 6 years old. Oh. And I was in my parents' closet on the ground crying. Oh. And holding my dad's picture, like in a frame. Okay. And there are some memories that you just forget, but there are some memories you will never forget. But I was super surprised that I was there. Oh, so you didn't remember this? No, I remembered it, but I never thought about it. Oh, okay. But when he put me on, like into a meditative state, I ended up going there. Okay. And I had no plan of going there. Right. But that's where it took me, and that's where I needed to be. And I remember explaining to him where I am. I go, I'm in my closet, in my parents' closet, sorry. I'm probably, I don't know, maybe 6 to 8 years old. I have no idea. But I'm holding my dad's picture and hugging it. I'm crying. Oh. And so he helped me figure out what that was about. And he allowed, so he guided now maybe when I first saw him, I was 35. So 35-year-old Meena was able to walk into that closet. Wow. And give her a hug and pick her up and say it's going to be okay.
Oh my goodness.
That look, I'm 35. You're going to be okay.
Oh, Meena.
You have a great life. You're happy, right? And that's what inner child healing is. You got to go back there and you got to reparent yourself, right? Our parents did the best they could. Yes. I love our parents. But there was a few things I needed as a child I did not get.
That's right.
And I went back and I gave that to myself.
Oh my God, dude. That's just like so powerful. I'm just like sitting here with goosebumps, imagining 35-year-old opening that closet door, little 5-year-old you looking up with those tears and hugging your, dad's picture and trying to make sense and say you're good. And like, thank you for sharing that. That's amazing. I don't even know what to say.
I did not, I had, this is the fun thing about speaking to you, right? Like you just never know.
I know.
Where the conversation's going to go. So
it's so true. We like laugh, cry. Like, yeah, I really appreciate you sharing that. And I wonder, have you gone back? Have you on your own gone back and talked to yourself more as like a younger you?
I have, but not so much. Like I don't feel the need anymore. Oh, yeah. I believe self-healing, it's something you have to work on every day. I'm not finished, yes. But I feel like I have healed that part. What happened in childhood, I've healed that part.
Yeah.
And that what happened in childhood is why I had anxiety, IBS, went through a bout of depression. So that I had to go back to that event because that's what started it all. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the way you talked about that earlier, we do need to go back in order to move forward. And, sometimes it's like, I picture like driving in my car and, it's like, okay, today, where in the car am I? Am I in the driver's seat? Am I driving my trauma? Do I feel like I'm in charge? Do I feel like I'm making good sense? Where's my trauma? Is it in the passenger seat creeping up, trying to get to taking over the wheel? Is it all the way in the trunk because I'm like, nope, today we're good. Like, right. And I think it will, for me, it's constantly, it'll creep up. It'll keep trying to, jump over and take over take over the steering wheel. Like you said, if I can't go back and make amends. And what I really appreciate, like over the years, you and I've talked a lot about this, is we as Indian women growing up with, as first generation, we as we start to heal, we start to forgive a lot of people in our world that were doing the best they could. And, at some point, you and I have talked about at some point as we become young adults and growing, becoming adults and having our own families and all that, like we have to start to take responsibility for the things that happen to us. And it doesn't mean that it's, I did something wrong to have something bad happen to me. Yeah. It just means that I have to be in charge with this. So either I'm going to bring it along and this is a part of who I am. And, I've said this before, like my mom always says something good has to come out of something bad. And so that little 5-year-old in that closet is asking for you and you go and you hug her and you give her what she needs. And it's like you kind of have her with you now and you're working as a team versus fighting against each other. And it takes a lot to be able to do something like that. And I've just always admired you because you never give yourself enough credit. You're always the one that's wanting to help the others, and you love so selflessly, like you have friends that are in different places and family members, and you're always there to like help people in the way that they want. And I just like have seen you in the last few years give yourself that too and start to give yourself that kind of love as well. And I think it's been so nice to see, because as you do that, now I learn all these lovely things that help me as well too, you know, because you inspire me all the time. I'm listening to you, and I you know, you mentioned your mentor, your trainer, and I don't know if you're okay with this, but one of my favorite things about you, there's 100 billion of them, is you and I think you and I were disconnected during my wedding time, right?
Yes, yeah.
You were, like you said, you were going through some depression. You were working some things out.
Yeah.
You were also getting over a divorce at the time. Yeah. You married young. Yeah. Right?
What year did you get married again? Sorry.
2008.
Okay, so it was PTSD, 2008 to about the day I met Blake, I had PTSD. So I
PTSD from, that's post-traumatic stress disorder. So you had PTSD from something that was tragic that happened?
Yeah, of course. It ended up coming out all at once in 2007. So there's three things. Okay. Right? If I start at the beginning, so it's sexual abuse as a child, my divorce, and death of a loved one. So what happened was,
a lot of grief.
Yeah, a lot of people go through this, right? You just kind of put it in the back of your mind. You shove it. Memories come up, but you just, what is that? And then you just take a drink and it all goes away, right?
Yeah.
And then I remember your wedding coming up. And so if you think about childhood to 2007. Yeah. And then it hit me in 2008. So then, I couldn't.
Yeah. And I don't know these things at that time, right? Because you and I kind of disconnected a little bit. Yeah. And it wasn't anything that happened. I think that's the beauty of our friendship, is that we have so much space where we can go months without talking to each other. And then one of us fires a text and we're back on track. But we always know that the other one's there. Just, you know, I'm doing my thing, you're doing your thing. It's all good. And I love that about our friendship. It's like zero maintenance.
Love it.
You know, and so talking about this and bringing it up, it's never, and I know you know this, but I always feel like I need to say, like, it's never about making you or our relationship feel bad about it. It's just it's the opposite, actually. It's like a lot of appreciation that I have that you were going through something like this. You're experiencing, you're saying PTSD. I'm getting ready for what is like a highlight of my life. You know, going to marry this man that, you know, as you know, Carrie, and, you know, it's going to be exciting, and you're not able to be there. And I was disappointed, but I actually had a lot of understanding. I got it. I understood, because you would never not show up if it wasn't something that's bigger than my wedding, and a lot of things are bigger than my wedding. You know, so I think sometimes you have to understand, like, when we're experiencing this exciting time in our life, others may not be. And while it's exciting for us, it doesn't have to be anything bad that the other person over there is not in the same place. You know, sometimes we get more disheartened when the person isn't there, or someone didn't call us on our birthday, versus all the people that did. Right. But it wasn't that way. I knew, I'm like, she's doing something. She's got something going on. We'll catch up. Wow. And it was around the time that I had Xander about 11 years ago. That was your first visit to Calgary. You came the May long weekend, and you came, and you had just finished doing this fitness competition. And like, can we talk about that? Because you mentioned a few minutes ago how Blake, your mentor, came into your life, your trainer. But he's not a trainer. I have a trainer. Shout out Tyler. And I love Tyler, but it's not that kind of, like, this was a whole different level that happened. Can we talk about that? Because it's like one of my favorite things about you.
Of course. Yeah. I just get so excited when I think about that time in my life. I think I'm super proud of it.
You should be.
I was 29.
Yeah.
I was 29. And
because you're way younger than me. You're a December baby.
You're a lot older.
Yeah.
You know, you're 6 months older than me.
I know. And respect your elders.
Yes. So I do respect you a lot. I was 29. You had already turned 30.
Thank you.
You're like super old. And I remember, I was partying hard.
Yeah.
And I remember being a little bit out of control. And I remember thinking something's got to change, because I remember feeling, which I've not shared this with anybody, the alcohol was making me physically sick, right? Because I had IBS.
Yes.
Right? And so I remember thinking, this alcohol's not working anymore. It's making me sick. I need to do something else.
Yeah.
And the thought of trying drugs entered my mind.
Like what kind? Like anything? Just
hard drugs.
Okay.
It came into my mind.
Okay.
So what I did was, I'm like, I got to do something, because especially the history of my family with issues, I can't go down that road, right? But that's the point. That's where I was at, to numb out the memories that were flashing into my mind.
Right.
I'm like, I got to keep going, but alcohol was not working for me anymore. So I remember my cousin Robin. Hi, Robin.
Hey, Robin.
She found a group on for boot camp classes.
Oh.
And so she was friends with Blake first, and then I'm like, okay, I'm gonna try this guy's boot camp, right?
Had you been working out at that time?
I was very in and out of the gym, never consistent.
Yeah, because like I don't really remember you being a very like workout.
No.
Like that wasn't your thing.
No, it wasn't. In my 20s, it wasn't.
Yeah. Okay. No. Yeah. So you go to this boot camp.
Yeah, I go to this boot camp. So I went to the boot camp, and I'm all about energy and the way I feel when I enter a room. Okay. And I entered that room, as hard as that boot camp was. I loved how this guy made everyone feel like family. Oh. I'm like, this is my place, right? I mean, I'll eventually get better with these classes. So I did it for a couple months.
Yeah.
And then one day, I remember it was November.
Yeah.
So of 2011, I guess. And I said, okay, Blake, I need you to train me. And I remember I had like $2,000 left in my account.
Yeah.
And I just gave it to him.
Oh, wow.
And I'm like, here it is. I need you to train me. And I need to get, I'm not sure if I shared the parting scene with him. I'm like, I need to be out of that. I need to get, healthy and whatever. So we started personal training together. And I remember I was so dedicated to his classes. They were at 6 a.m. Usually I'm walking in like 3, 4 a.m.
Oh my gosh.
And I remember the friends that I was partying with at that point were walking in at 5 a.m. and I was getting up to attend his 6 a.m. boot camp.
How did you just do that? Like for a second, like how did you just all of a sudden say, because like that's still happening, that environment, that's still happening around you.
Yeah, they're coming in and out.
And I get what you're saying. Like you don't want to get into like go down that addictive path.
Mm-hmm.
Like how did you decide to put your alarm on and get up at that time?
The love I did have for myself, even though at that point in my life, the things I was doing, it was not self-love activities, but the love I had for my family.
Oh, yeah.
My nieces and nephews, they're my entire world at that point. And so my love for them made me be like, no, you can't go down that route. Yeah. And my parents, so that kept me, and I was motivated. I was like, if I put my mind to something, I will get it done.
I know. Yeah, I've seen it. Yeah.
And I saw the disappointment in my friends. Like at that point, they're not my friends anymore. But like at the time that I did share with them, it was just needed. That's who was in my life, and sending love to them. And it's
okay. So you put your alarm clock on. You now are going to this training with him. Okay.
Right? So what happened was, it was January now of 2012.
Okay. Yeah.
And I'm driving to one of our sessions, and I know it's going to be super hard. And I remember driving to the session. And I remember having a meltdown in the car. And I remember screaming.
Wow.
And I don't make deals with God.
Yes.
Okay, I don't ask God for anything except guidance.
Yes.
Okay, all I do is I pray and I say thank you. Right?
Yeah.
But that day I made a deal with God, and I'm like, if something doesn't change, that is it.
Like something as in what? Like what do you mean?
Like the anxiety I was feeling, because now I'm not drinking anymore.
Yeah,
right?
okay.
So now it's all coming up, and I have IBS, I'm anxious, I have social anxiety, and still struggling with drinking too much before going to a social situation, right? And I go, something doesn't change, that's it. I can't do this anymore. Right? I go walk into this session.
Yeah.
And Blake's like, okay, Meena, this is going to be a very different session than any other session you've had. Because like most people with him, he said, like either cry or vomit.
Oh my God. Yes.
And it's not that that's his intention
at
all, but that's just what happens.
Right.
So I walk in and I'm just like, I grew up with 4 brothers. Like just whatever you want me to do, I'll do it. Yeah. And that was always my tone with him too.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, I'm not going to vomit. And I'm like, I don't think I would swear at you. I had too much respect for this guy to swear at him.
Yeah.
So
I swear at my trainer all the time.
I
so
just
good
couldn't.
for you to respect him.
I'm not saying that you wouldn't respect him.
No, right. Good for you to respect yours.
But I just couldn't.
Yeah.
I just couldn't. Because I just had this feeling that this guy's special. Like, I truly believe that God does his work through people, right? And they send people to your life to help you. And this was God's way of being like, okay, you asked for help. This is how it's going to be.
Right.
So he goes to me that day. It's going to be a hard session. Okay, I completed the 60 minutes. And I thought my session was over. I did not vomit or swear.
And you're like, whatever. I did this.
He's like, we're not done. I was like, what? And then I got a little bit angry. So Blake's he wanted me to let it out. So if I was lifting heavy, I would not let it out.
Yeah.
I wouldn't scream. I would just do it. Okay. And that was me holding in the anxiety.
But he could see something needed to be let out, hey?
Right. His goal was, I need you to scream. I need you to, like, if you're lifting heavy, just let it out. Yeah. I never would.
Yeah.
Right? Fear of embarrassment of what would happen. So when he said the session was over, I was like, no. I'm like, I'm done.
Yeah.
When he said the session's not over, I'm like, no, I'm done. I've done my 60 minutes. He's like, no, we're not done yet. So I am tired. And he's like, I'm like, what do you want me to do? He's like, this medicine ball, you got to throw it against the wall and squat and do 50 of them. Yeah. And I got mad inside, but I didn't show it to him. Oh. And I think I got through, I don't know how many. It wasn't many.
Yeah.
And I started screaming.
Oh, wow.
I'm like, fine. You want me? I fucking hate anxiety. It's fucking taken over my life. And I'm throwing this 50, I don't know how much it weighs.
Yeah.
This heavy medicine ball while doing squats. Fuck. And I'm crying. Mm-hmm. And I'm yelling at anxiety.
Wow.
And I'm like, I can't fucking take this anymore. And I'm crying like crazy. He's like, there you go.
Oh my gosh.
And I went down to my knees and I just started crying. And then he's like, okay, get up. We have one more exercise. I was like,
my God.
Fuck that.
Jeez, this guy doesn't quit.
No, I'm like, fuck that. I can't.
Yeah.
No.
Like, what more does he want from you in that moment?
Right? Made me do another exercise that involved squats.
Oh, God.
And I'm watching now in front of the mirror. And I couldn't do like that many. And I broke down and I cried and he hugged me. And one of my wishes before the session was, I need someone to hug me.
Oh, like when you were in the car and you were like,
I'm like, I need someone to hold me and hug me so I can cry on their shoulder. And so what happened was I finished, I started crying and he hugged me and I cried on his shoulder, but I was very uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So what happened was I tried to move away and he never let go.
Wow.
So I'm like, oh, fuck, I'm just going to cry. I'm going to cry on this guy's shoulder.
Oh, Meena.
And I cried and he let me and he held me. And no one's ever helped me like that.
Yeah. You're seeing this trainer and now things are getting a little more intense because you're showing up to these workouts. You're seeing a difference. I remember when I came down and saw you because I was either I just had Xander. Yeah, because now it's 2012, so Xander's about to turn a year old. Mm-hmm. I came and visited you early in the year, and I remember I came down to your place, and you had like this plate with all those dividers in it. So you had like certain amount of broccoli and certain amount of vegetables, and you're like, I got to eat a lot. I'm like training, and I'm like, who is this woman? Like, what are you doing? And you're like, I gotta like, I'm trying to like get to this weight. And I'm like, don't we usually want to take the weight off? Like, what are you doing? You're like, no, I'm like working on this thing. I'm working with this trainer. And then you tell me that, I don't want to screw up the story because this is like what I remember where things maybe start to turn for you, is there was like that magazine where you saw like a fitness model on there. Mm-hmm. Didn't you like bring that to Blake and you were like, I want to look like this?
It was initially his idea. So before I met him, one of my friends was doing competitions and I had looked into it because I'm like, wow, this is awesome. I met quite a few trainers, but I'm like, I never, ever felt good energy because I never wanted to take anything that wasn't natural. Yeah. So that I left it. I'm like, it's not working. I'm not finding the right person. Yeah. What happened was after that day, maybe a week or two later, Blake brought the idea to me. He's like, hey, do you want to compete?
Oh, yeah, okay.
I was like, funny you said that because it's been on my mind. I never met the right trainer. Yeah. And he's like, there's a few girls in our gym that are doing it. I'll train you, but you can practice with them with the walking and all the posing and stuff, and do it as a team as them. I'm like, okay, give me 2 weeks to think about it. 2 weeks, I said yes.
So you said, give me 2 weeks, and then how did you get to yes?
Because I know it was a big commitment, and I respected him, and I'm like, I don't want to just do this and say I'm doing it and not follow through. That big aha gym session was January 13th. I remember because it was my nephew's birthday. And so I started training the 1st of February. So I had 2 weeks to think about it.
Yeah.
And I was on stage by May 19.
So you went to Kelowna for like this big, is it provincial or was it like national?
It was a novice show. So it was a beginner. So he picked the show for me.
Yeah.
The interesting thing is when I found out the date of the show, right?
Yeah.
So a couple things I shared with him was the reasons of my anxiety and my PTSD was like, I hadn't at this point shared the abuse, but I had shared the death of a loved one.
Yes.
And my divorce was like, that wasn't at the top of my list. It was more the death of the loved one.
Yeah.
The competition was on May 19th.
Yeah.
And it ended up being on his birthday.
Yeah.
And I was like
all the signs, right?
You can't plan this.
He's like right there with you at this competition. And how did that competition go for you?
To get there, I didn't think I would make it. It's the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. I was in school to become a licensed practical nurse. So I'd be up at 6 a.m. My first training session would be 9 to 11. I would wake up in the morning, make all my food.
Yeah.
Session 1 is 9 to 11. I would leave for school at 1, go to Vancouver, study with my friends till 5. Class was 5 to 9. Then I would leave from class and go to the gym for my second session.
For like 9 p.m. or 10 p.m.?
Yeah. Holy
crap. And that was every day?
Every day.
And didn't you have to like boil chicken? Like I remember being like, what are you doing? I remember you saying your classmates are in Starbucks having coffee and having treats and you're in the car watching them eating your boiled chicken because you had to stick to your routine about eating certain food because we're not just talking like, boot camp body. We're talking like full on competition body. Like I think I burst into tears when you sent me pictures. The first one was when you were trying on like what you had to wear. Remember?
I didn't come out of the bathroom.
Yeah.
I told him, he's sitting there. I'm like, I'm not wearing this.
Because it was like this tiny little competition bikini, right? Like when in your life have you ever even worn something like that?
I've never, at that point, never even worn a bathing suit.
Yeah.
At 30 years old.
Yeah, I believe it.
And I'm like, you want me to wear this on stage? I'm like, no, I'm not doing that.
That's crazy. And like your family was there. You had a lot of support from your family, right? Mm-hmm. Like I think you've talked about maybe for your parents it was a little bit different because you're literally wearing nothing, on stage doing this thing. But I mean, this was bigger than that. You had a lot of support from family that got what you were doing because like you were like that Flexmo like chiseled in this way, and then you get that spray tan. I remember you telling me how you have to like put sheets on the hotel bed so it doesn't come off, right?
Oh man.
But then like what was the outcome of that competition?
So there's okay, you go out in the morning. There's 2 shows a day, right?
Yeah, first show, yeah.
So the first time you go out on stage,
yeah,
you have a height class. So I did figure. So there's physique, figure, bikini. I did figure. And so your height class, so everybody was like 5'7" and up, right?
Yeah.
There's 10 ladies in my group.
Yeah.
So the first time you're showing the judge, you're doing your poses, right?
Right.
So in the morning show, they pick the top 5. In the evening show, when you go back on stage, they will pick the winner.
Okay.
Right. So they'll assign you 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Okay.
So in the morning, I had no idea that I was top 5.
So can we just stop this for a second? Because what I've learned from you about this is first of all, it's like not common to train in less than 8 months as hard as you did to get to a competition like that. So you did that somehow, you majestic woman, you. And then you get to this competition and it's your first time and you're going there thinking this is just an experience because nobody really ever gets in the top 5. Like it's very rare for a first, you're like novice, like you're a rookie showing up to this thing.
Yes. Yeah.
And there's women that have done these competitions many more times, right? In comparison.
They have way more muscle than me.
And yet you got selected in the top 5, Meena. That's like incredible.
But I didn't know because I never was in training to get a placement.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was training to basically put my middle fingers up to anxiety.
Yeah.
And go and get through a very, 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 my heart was broken. It was broken because losing someone, it broke my heart. I know. It was in pieces. Yeah. And that show put it back together, but like bandaged up. Yeah. And the healing after kind of just, finished it off. But going out in the morning, we all did our poses. They brought 5 ladies up to the front. They asked the other 5 ladies to exit the stage, and I'm standing in the front posing because Blake was like, it's not only about how much muscle you have. It's about your walk. It's about your confidence. It's about your posing. Yeah. So Blake had trained me, do not get out of that pose until the judge tells you to. So I remember keeping my pose, sweating like crazy. Yeah. And my peripheral vision. I'm like, why are these girls shaking it off and then posing again? Yeah. I'm like, I was like trained not to let go of this pose. Right. So I had my posing down. I would be studying for school, but I would have my heels on and on my
while
breaks.
You're studying. Oh,
on my breaks, I would, it's hard to hold those poses.
Oh, I bet. Yes. I wouldn't know, man. Yeah.
So I exited out, and I remember a woman saying to me, "Hey, congrats for placing." I'm like, "Oh, what do you mean?" She's like, "You placed top 5. We just don't know, like what placement you're gonna be." I go, "I'm top 5." And then she's like, "Yeah." I'm like, "Oh my gosh." Wow. Okay. And I'm like, "Wow." Evening show. I go up, and they announced number 5. And then you put your hand up, you exit the stage. I'm like, oh my God, I'm top 4.
Wow, so you weren't even number 5, you were like under that.
Yeah, and then they're like, called my name, top number 4. I put my hand out and I exited. And then the top 3 were left. Yeah. I was like, what just happened?
What did that do for you?
I mean, like I said, I did not... The goal wasn't to get placed. Yes. It was to show up on stage because Blake always said when I wanted to give up, and I cried and cried at the end, and I wanted to give up. He's like, "What is your goal?" I go, "My goal is to get on stage," because I easily could have given up, or I could have got injured, or right.
There's so many things that could have happened in that training time. I agree. Yeah.
Like all I want to do is get on stage because I wanted to complete this goal.
Yeah. Yeah. A follow through where your IBS isn't getting in the way. Yeah. Where all of the, anxiety that you're touching on, there's lots of things that were contributing to that. Yeah. And, as you're saying, you're trying to mend this broken heart and wondering, will it ever mend? You know, you lost your brother and he was such an important part of your life. And now you're at a show on his birthday, and this all came from you manifesting, putting out there and that drive, that one training, right? Like I need something here. Yeah. And, you need a touch. You needed someone to believe in you. And, like, it's amazing to have someone in your corner in that way to learn, holy crap, because Blake was there all along, but it sounds like you learned how to rely on yourself during this process. You were the one that made yourself stay in your car and eat your boiled chicken. You were the one that got up as early as you did to do your routine. You were the one that continued studying. Like, you gave yourself all of this compassion and all of this love and support, and look at what came out of that.
And he does say to me, like when I say thank you so much, I couldn't have done this without you, he doesn't take the credit. Yeah. And I get it, because his point of view is like you said, you worked hard, you showed up. Yeah. But I truly believe in my heart. Yeah. There's no way I would be sitting here in front of you if it wasn't for him. Yeah. There's no way. My path would have been, and my love for my family, and not wanting to have them take care of someone who is going down the wrong path. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. Because you like you said, you were a call away from starting whatever next addictive, substance would calm or cope, right?
Yeah.
Like numb that pain that you were experiencing. And now all of a sudden, about a year later, you're standing on the stage with your creepy spray tan.
Yeah.
What color was your bikini?
It was a really nice, like, purple
Yes,
color.
it was like a glittery, wasn't it? Like a shiny, metallic-y purple?
Metallic.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I kept the, like, glitter to a minimum.
Yeah.
But I just it just worked out.
And you don't even tell people this story. Like, I think that's the beauty of it. Like, you go through this, like, I'd have pictures of myself everywhere, billboards, look at me, I'm this, fashion or this fitness person. You go through this, like, mega life-changing experience, and it's for, I can tell it's for you, it's your thing, because I'm the one that's always like, Meena, let's talk about this, or bring this up, like, you've been with friends of ours from the past that have no idea that you did something like this, because it's not about flexing for someone else. Mm-hmm. It was your process to, from start to finish, to learn and grow, so that you can manage the pain that you've experienced in your life. Mm-hmm. The pain's not going to go away, but now you feel like you have this capacity and ability to, when it shows up, you know how to treat it. You know how to take care of it.
Yeah.
And, I love that story, because that's one of many about the strength that you have, and it's in all of us. Yes. We all have it.
Yes. It's
just, a matter of timing and when we're ready to go through this. And for you, I don't know if I could ever do something like that, because it's way harder to do what you did than to do what would have been the easy thing, but would have destroyed your life.
Yes.
Which was, accessing other drugs and things like that.
Right.
And I think that's the thing about anxiety, like it's a double-edged sword. It can beat us, but it can also treat us. Mm-hmm. Like we have times where we can't make sense of it, and it really takes a toll on us. And then we have these times where we're like, I'm actually walking towards my anxiety than walking away from it.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. I love that you said that. Because the day I befriended my anxiety, I did this meditation where I sat my anxiety down at a table, had dinner with it, and spoke to it. And I said, look, thank you, because I understand why you came into my life.
Yeah.
You were protecting me because someone took something from me as a child. Mm-hmm. And took my innocence, and I get it. Yeah. I get why you came to protect me. But going forward, I am okay now. Yeah. You need to only come forward when there is real danger.
Yeah.
Okay? No more watching our back, doing everyday life, because I can't function anymore if you do that. I gave the anxiety a name.
Yeah, okay. What'd you name it?
I don't know why.
Yeah.
I have no idea why the name Nancy came.
Nancy?
I don't know.
That's not even an Indian name.
It's not even a brown name.
Yeah.
But then
Interesting.
You got to go with the first thought. Nancy.
Nancy. Negative Nancy.
It could be something in my past. I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe I was a white person in my past.
Who knows? I mean, you're lighter than light, so who knows?
So maybe I was. I don't know. But
yeah. Nancy. Interesting.
I go, Nancy, look.
Yeah.
You need to back off.
You need to chill, Nancy.
I love
Dial
you.
it down.
And the moment you, just like you said, you stop fighting it and you start to accept it. Like you said about the car.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. Right? Like you're in charge. You feel it. You feel better in charge of it. And I think what you're saying you did was sort of externalizing the problem. Mm-hmm. So I think sometimes in my past at work, I've seen a lot of therapists do this where it's very intimate to be the problem. It's very intimate to be like, I have this problem. And with young people who are trying to make sense of their trauma, we a lot of times will pull it out and talk about that problem in a third party.
Right.
Because you can address it better. It's very hard to address yourself. And yet when it's in front of you, like you did, having dinner with it and romancing it, right? Like, let me candlelit dinner anxiety. It's great because it's less intimate, and you can have that kind of a process. And I think that's lovely, like that you were able to get to that place and do that. That's big.
It was big. It was healing, and it was like a aha moment. And it is when I started physically feeling better.
Interesting. What do you think happened then?
It's just like, I feel you carry trauma in your physical body as well.
Yeah.
And it comes up in different ways for different people.
Right.
Right? So for some people, it comes up as headache, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
For some people, it's, some sort of pain,
Yes.
right, in their body. Mine's in my gut.
Yeah.
So I'm still on a journey of like healing my gut. My gut needs to be healed. And so it's something that I work on every single day, and I will continue to work on, because happy gut, it means happy life.
Totally. Like you've identified where in your body that anxiety is coming from.
Yes.
And now how do you tackle that? And I think it's very like, it's this whole self-learning, self-healing process that you've gone through. You're like one of the best therapists I've ever met, and you're not even a therapist. Because honestly, and I'm not a therapist, like, but working alongside of them over the years and in the job setting that I did, a lot of what you're talking about, from my learning is exactly that. In the 90s, there was these doctors that worked at, like the long story is these doctors were at this clinic, and they're treating people for diabetes, a lot of like heart and sort of major health issues. And these people were coming in, and a lot of them also were obese. And so there was a lot of illnesses that were coming about. And so again, long story short, there's more to this. It's called the Adverse Childhood Experience Survey. It's called ACEs. Okay. And what it does, it's a tool that can inform us how much trauma have we experienced. And so these people that were coming in with these physical ailments, they were doing this survey, and they'd asked about 10 questions like, have you ever experienced, sexual abuse, all the abuses, emotional, verbal? Have any of your parents ever been in prison? Are you a child of divorce and separation? Were there times where you weren't fed? Do your parents experience mental health issues? And there's like a list of these questions. Okay. And the higher you score at a 10, the more likely it kind of just helps set the stage of like how much trauma you might have experienced as a child. So these childhood traumatic experiences, then as we grow, start to come out in physical ailments, these physical health issues. Yeah. And it's so fascinating that we live in a first world country and how we don't have a wraparound medical system where we can say, let's treat the mind and the body and the spirit together. Yes. Right? So, and being, of a minority culture, we're following the anatomy of Caucasian people. Yeah. Right. So there's that part to it too. And so what a naturopath could do for you, maybe a Western med couldn't, what a Western doc can do, it's like against each other. They're not all working together. And so we're going to my doctor to say, I've gained all this weight. Now my doctor's going to give me pills. Yes. Right. And now I'm going over here. And I think the more we start to make sense, like you said, like instead of jumping to fix and get to the bottom of, okay, I'm going to fix this problem, that problem. I'm going to stop talking to that person. I'm going to start this. I am so grateful that you talked today about we got to go backwards. We got to go to our past, and we got to do some research and learn about our history. And it's not what's wrong with me. It's what happened to me. Yeah. How did those things happen? there's talk about people that have anaphylactic allergies. There's like research out there. Like my sister and I have anaphylactic allergies to all nuts, as you know.
Yeah.
And I've read articles and I've heard a lot of people talk about how something traumatic must have happened to Serena and I at that very young age prior to us having our first allergic reaction.
Yes. Yeah.
Something would happen. And for years I was like, that's dumb. And then, you know, I start getting to this place where I'm like, I wonder, you know, because there's all these memories, like you said, that we have stored, and some, as our brain, as we develop in adolescence, we do a lot of pruning. So a lot of those memories and a lot of those skills, a lot of those things that we didn't really access at the age of, you know, adolescence, the brain is kind of developing again in the way it was when it was an infant. So it's pruning out a lot of those skills or those memories and those things. So like, it's hard sometimes to go back and know, did something happen? What was that about? How come I have this, you know, physical ailment? How come my hips always hurt or whatever? And I'm not saying that this is the only explanation. I'm just encouraging us to read a little bit more into it. Yeah. Be a little more attuned to, when does that happen? How come I have these migraines? How come I have this back pain? How come when does it come up for me?
Yeah, and I think what is super important to learn what your triggers are.
Yeah.
So when the migraine comes up, when you have a stomach ache, right? We in the past, I never paid attention to the triggers. Right. Now I am so aware of my triggers that either I avoid certain places, situations, or people. Yeah. Or you just become more aware. Yeah. Awareness is like, the first step is awareness. Yeah. Like, this is what I go through. This is what my trigger is. Yeah. And it takes a while to learn your triggers. Totally. With the help of a professional, I truly believe. Yes. I had a team. I had a personal trainer, I had a naturopath doctor. Yeah. I had a therapist. I had friends, and I had my family. Mm-hmm. Right? Yeah. So you had a village. So together, we, you know, especially with my naturopath and my therapist, and a mentor, like a guidance person, like I figured all these things out. Yeah. Yeah. You were also very attuned. You wanted to figure these things out. You kind of dialed whatever noise was happening around you so you can focus in on, like, why is this happening? What's this about? I think that's a big kudos to you too, because that's not easy for us to do. We're so, like you said, we cope or we numb and we fill the space with all this noise so we don't have to go back and focus on that. But today, like, I hear a lot of what you're saying is, you know, and to be honest, a couple episodes ago, I talked to my husband and my brother and my cousin Amin out in BC, you know, Amin, and he talked a lot about going back to the past and seeking counseling, and he actually stopped drinking to start to deal with some of his past as well. Yeah. And going back and figuring out, okay, what are my triggers? Why do I get so upset about this? All these sorts of things really help us moving forward. Yeah. And that ACEs score it doesn't mean that if you have a 10 out of 10, you something's wrong with you or you've experienced the most trauma. You could have a score as 1. One bad thing can happen to us and impact us as severely as 10 things happening to us. And that little informing tool helps people go back and look at, where should I start? Yes. How can I make sense? Maybe my parents' divorce and it really did impact me more than I thought it did. Right. You know, maybe that's part of why I'm struggling with relationships now or whatever it is, right? Or maybe the fact that watching my parents with this mental health illness all my life, they weren't able to give me the things that I need. All these sorts of things can help us start to make sense of where we can go, you know, so. Definitely. And like, I think the biggest gift we can give not only to ourselves, but to your family members and to our community is to do that work. Yeah. As hard as it is. It's a gift to yourself, but it's also a gift to the people that you are around every single day. Yeah. Right? The people, when you go out into the community, every single human being that I was talking about the lady I was sitting next to on the plane. On the plane, right. Yeah, on the way here. So like before I went to bed, I did a meditation for her. Yeah. And I just kind of pictured her like happy and healthy. And so I couldn't do that for other people. Thinking of others, yeah. 5-10 years ago, are you kidding me? Yeah. So not only do I bless myself with the work that I do, but also at the end of my day, every single human that I came into contact could have been at the person giving us our Starbucks or at the grocery store, or even a pissed off person who gives me the finger when we're driving.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not so angry anymore.
Isn't like, you know, I think it's amazing to hear this, because I also feel like you're in the 40s now too, and we're in this place where we just want some peace in our lives. Yes. And being angry sometimes feels good. And it's so scary sometimes to let go of a feeling that I've always had. I've always been angry about this one thing, and it's interesting when you're attuned to yourself, you can see yourself like changing a little bit. You're like, oh my God, I'm going through a process, because all of a sudden I'm not angry, but it's hard. I want to keep being angry because that's all even though it's not good, but that's all I know.
Yes.
It's scary about what could come. And so sometimes growing or evolving can feel scary, because at least I know what this is going to do. And in some ways, you know, it's what people that are in abusive relationships do.
Yeah.
It's difficult for many reasons. This is just one example of leaving because it is what you know. It's safer in some ways than whatever may come. And I think to go back and be responsible for ourselves instead of, you did this thing to me, being able to say, you know, I got me, I can take care of me, and I'm going to go back and heal in that time. I think, like you said, that's just going to enhance our community, going to enhance you as a person and whatever relationships that you're about to encounter or, you know, be part of.
For sure.
Right? Like it's going to make life better.
Totally. And one thing I've learned about emotions, I always used to feel bad, right?
Yeah.
About having certain emotions. And I'm doing a lot of reading.
Yes.
And even in my yoga classes, I tell people, you know, even my clients who are super anxious while they're pregnant. One thing that I tell them is, it's okay, accept that you're having that emotion, but the key thing is not to sit with it. So let's take anger for example. I was angry as a child. You know that. I was angry in high school.
Yes, she was.
But everybody needs to channel that. It's okay to be angry, but we need to challenge that, that energy into something positive. I took that anger and I put it into the weights.
Yeah.
I love lifting weights.
Yeah.
Whereas another person who may not have the support that I had takes that anger and go commits a crime.
Right.
Okay. Not saying that that's okay.
Yeah.
But that is what is happening.
Right.
The difference is the support that you have.
Yeah.
Right? You have a village on this side and you have nobody on this side.
And I believe you need one person.
You
need one person. And we're not talking about a village of like 10, 30, 50. One person that says, I believe in you.
Yes.
During those times that you yourself don't believe in yourself. You 100%. Just need that one person. That's it.
Yes. And I don't mean, you don't need a village. You need one person.
Yeah.
But let's say that person didn't have that one person and they channel that anger that way. Feelings like, anxiety, anger, jealousy, resentment, these emotions are low vibration feelings, right? We want to be vibrating high in order to attract good things to us, but we can't shovel these emotions down as well, right?
True.
So telling people, hey, it's okay to say I'm anxious, I'm mad, I'm sad, right? Women, we're not allowed to being like, to say that out loud, like, hey, I'm mad, without us seeing like, oh, she's such a bitch, like she's always pissed off. Or men, especially in our community, I'm feeling scared, my baby is coming. Like, and when my prenatal education classes, I separate the men and women. So I have the men talking in one group and the women talking, because you men are not gonna, like, probably not gonna say things in front of their spouse, right? So you hear them say things like, oh man, I'm scared if I'm making enough money. I have a child coming. Can I support my family?
Yes.
Right? If maybe it's hard for them to say that to their spouse because they're going through something different.
Exactly.
Birth, the anxiety of giving birth and postpartum. Right? So my message there is that it's okay to feel those feelings as long as we can channel them into something positive. For some, it is starting a podcast, working out, playing golf, playing whatever it is, right?
I appreciate that. you're talking about these classes that you do. Can you talk a little bit more about what you're talking about?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes, I love it. I love it so much. So I work with pregnant people and families during their pregnancy and at the birth and postpartum. So in my prenatally, I love teaching. I'm a childbirth educator, so I love teaching those classes.
Yeah.
To help men and women prepare to like bring this tiny little human being to the world.
Yeah.
And I get people talking about, hey, let's get real. Tell me how you're feeling.
Right.
Tell each other. Sometimes I give them a piece of paper and I let them write it out and then put it in a basket if they really don't want to be like, I'm the one who said I'm afraid of this.
Right.
But everyone's fears are the same.
It's so true. We're not all unique.
No.
We are all thinking very similar things. You know, it's like in school when that one person asked that question that you thought was stupid and you're like, oh my God, okay. Thank you for asking that.
Thank you for asking. I love you. Like, you know, you had the courage to ask that. And when you see their energy and body language from the first class to even the third,
right,
that brings me so much joy.
Aw, you've been doing this for a few years. You have your own business, right? You run your doula services. So and that's part of that is offering those prenatal classes.
Yes. So if someone hires me to be their doula, I work with them prenatally. Yeah. So I visit with them once a month in their home, if they're having either a hospital or home birth. And then I am on call for them. From 37 weeks to 42.
Okay. That's crazy. So you're on call pretty much all the time.
I'm on call all the time.
That was part of like that was always like a challenge in the last little bit too, was like, how do we get together? Because you're like, oh, I'm on call. Like there's a birth at this time or hey, I didn't take any births. I can come down, you know, when it was Cam and Nana's wedding and all that stuff. Right. But how did you decide to get into this line of work?
I wanted to, so going back to, so the nursing environment wasn't for me. It was very hard to step away because I loved taking care of people. Yeah. But the environment and the different personalities that I would be working with, the people, like, I don't know, you kind of think like, why are you doing this job? Like, you know, you're doing it for the good pay and benefits. You should not be here. Yeah. I clashed with a lot of people because I do my nursing work in a very different way than most people.
Like how so?
Like properly.
Oh.
Like with dignity, with respect to the human body, right? I worked in a ventilator unit for 5 years as an LPN with people with ALS. What I saw, I'm like, I can't keep providing the care that I want to with these people, like with these coworkers. Like, why are you here, right? Get another job with good pay and benefits. Right. So I walked out. Yeah. And I felt like a failure. I felt like I give up. I felt like, you know, but when you're in that institution, when you're behind, it is hard to be one person against this big beast, right? And I'm like, I can't make a difference here. I can't. It was making my anxiety worse. I'm like, I just left. Right. You know, I had a job with Fraser Health, benefits and all that. Most people thought I was crazy. Totally. Like, no, I'm going with my gut. I need to go. I took a break.
Because you're working on getting to know your gut.
Yes.
Right?
And communicating with it.
Yeah.
So I left, took a break. And, you know, one day it was like 3 a.m. I couldn't sleep. I'm like, what do I do? What do I do with my skills? I have to be helping people. At 3 a.m, good old Google, I Googled it. What do I do with my LPN certificate, diploma, right? Yeah. This word doula came up. Yeah. And I was like, postpartum doula came up first. Yeah. So there's this agency who had licensed practical nurses working as postpartum doulas. Oh. And right away, I'm like, that's me. Right. Because I've been taking care of new families since I was like 16 years old, starting with my own siblings. That's right. Helping them, right? Yep. They were always priority. And I'm like, oh, I could do that. And then what happened was I got into, that led me into learning about birth doulas. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, oh, that's cool. Yeah. I'm gonna do that. I started looking into it. Right. Before I attended my first birth in June of 2018, I opened a business working full-time. I'm still working full-time at a naturopathic clinic, opened my business, took the training, got a mentor, and just dove right in.
You did. Yeah. Crap.
Attended my first birth.
Crazy.
In June. It was a home birth. Oh my God. And that was it.
You just did it. Hey, like it's amazing listening to these last few years, because there's less and less gaps of questioning. What should I do? Should I do this? Should I not? It's like you've done so much work building this trust with yourself, and to say I just dove right in. Whereas before you probably would have like thought about it for so long. What do I have to lose? Or like benefits and this paying job and all this, versus okay, what is my gut telling me this isn't right? To okay, I'm going to do this. Yeah, and like you're also underselling yourself, because you have done exceptionally well with this service. There's a lot of couples with all sorts of different stories, different cultures. I've heard like the partners, as in the dads, really connecting with you too, because you've created space for them as well as the mom. Like it's been really, really amazing listening to some of your stories, and you're just telling me the day, and I'm like, oh my God, Meena, you don't even see how much these people are loving the fact that you're there during this very important part of their life.
It's such an honor. Like, I tell them that when someone invites me to be their doula and they're inviting me to their birth, it is the biggest honor that I could receive. And yes, the job has its challenges like any job, but sitting with a woman who is in the birth process, like, I believe every single human being has a gift. Yeah. Everybody. Whether you choose to use that gift is up to you. But I have been searching and searching. I know the gifts that I have that are supposed to be shared with the world. And I was desperate to kind of start that. And the first time I sat with someone who's in the birthing process, I'm like, this is it. I don't care if this takes 6 or 24 hours. I will sit with you, and I will not give up on you. I will massage you. I will feed you. I will hydrate you, and I will not leave your side until your baby's in your arms. And then when you see a family of 2 becoming 3 or a family of 3 becoming 4, that moment is the purpose of my life. That was it for me after the first one. I'm like, this is it.
Yeah. That's amazing. That's amazing. And if your calling and your gift is to give and to help, even more important for you to go back and do the work that you've done over the years, that whole put your own oxygen mask on first before you put on someone else's. It's like you're living that. That's what you're doing, is in order to give more to my family, to my job, to my loved ones, I got to also have some compassion for myself and do these things for myself.
Oh, for sure. When you are responsible for creating a sacred space for someone giving life, you gotta have your shit. Like my mentor, bless her heart, she's not here anymore, but she always taught me, before you enter someone's birth space, if you have shit going on, you imagine a bucket at the outside of their space and you dump everything in there, because we have lives too. I have days where I have had an IBS flare up and I haven't eaten for a couple of days. Yeah. And I have to show up to a birth. And I haven't ate anything, and I can only drink water. Yeah. But I can't let that show. Right. You're like a mirror for that person having a baby. Yeah. These people are like relying on you, especially if it's a home birth, right? And so you have to do a lot of work on yourself.
Yes. Yeah. And I think I'm sorry to hear your mentor, you're saying she's not with us. So I think beautiful that you got to mention her and bring her up today. I think she'd be super proud of what you're talking about. It takes a lot to leave that at the door in order to give. And again, when you're attuned to yourself and aware, where is my stuff today in the car? Is it right there? Is it backseat? Trump, where is it? Yeah. I think when you start to realize those things about yourself, you do start to build a bigger awareness. And my brother was talking about this a couple episodes ago, just like how do you start to not in the moment let your life, your stress take over and just deal with what's happening in a diplomatic way. And I'm like, kudos to you, because that means you're in a place where you're starting to recognize you want to evolve, you want to respond to things better. And you know, you've taught me that a lot over the years. It's like, how do you want to leave this person in this conversation? You know, and a lot of that I learned through you. Like, how do you walk away from this conversation? You want to leave someone feeling like, well, that woman was, you know, made me feel like a piece of crap. And I can't say that I've always walked away that way, but again, we grow and we learn and we think, okay, like I moving forward want to do this better than I did previously.
Totally.
You know, so yeah, I think a lot of things when I'm with you. This is always a hard part, because like I know people have been giving me feedback lately and they're like, stop, don't end the conversation, keep talking. But I'm wondering, just as we're kind of coming to an end here, is there anything that you wish I had asked you today, or that you really wanted to talk about that you haven't shared?
I learned a new term, and it's called an HSP, highly sensitive person.
Highly sensitive person. Yeah. Okay.
I've been really been having a great time reading and learning about it, because I am understanding myself a lot more. And it was probably the biggest aha moment of my life, coming across this term. And so many things about me make sense. I do not feel different or crazy. I don't want to say crazy, but like, I don't feel lost and alone anymore. So yeah, I would love to share that with the world.
You touched on it a bit the other day with me. You sent me a TED Talk and you sent me this little article about it. And I'm really glad you brought that up, because I think in some ways it's kind of like this, as you're saying, you're learning to have conversations with your gut and your anxiety. When you share this with me, I was like, this is amazing, because I start reading about it. And I remember you saying at one point, like, you were questioning whether you needed to get assessed for, you know, a bipolar disorder, because you feel like sometimes your energy's at one level, and sometimes that level of high energy then drags you down and you can't get out of bed. And, you know, I think we're just all trying to make sense of who we are, and knowing a little bit more about why I do the things I do. Again, like what happened to me versus what's wrong with me. And when you were telling me about this and reading about it, I was like, oh my God, this is very interesting. And so my question for you is, what about, you know, learning and reading about being a highly sensitive person resonated with you?
Yeah, I was, there's certain things I still go through that confuse me. So I've been always trying to figure out what is wrong. Like, so yes, I questioned if I had depression again, but I'm like, my instincts are very, very strong to the point where it takes over my body. Like I know when what is, like I just get a feeling about something, right?
I think you have this vigilance, and maybe even a hypervigilance, because of trauma that you've experienced as a child. You've had to, it's a survival skill. You've had to like walk into an environment and assess it and make sure it's safe and not. So I think it makes sense why you say your instincts are so trustworthy, because they've protected you in many ways.
Yes. So I do trust my instincts. And so I questioned that, but that got ruled out, because I know what depression feels like. And I know it so well that I'm like, this is not depression. And then I even considered, bipolar disorder. Am I bipolar? Like, I have these super, super highs and I have these super, super lows. And that got ruled out. And there would have been nothing wrong if I did have any of these things, because I would have just accepted and dealt with it. But I needed to know what it was in order to know how to deal with it, right? And possibly even help others. But those two things got ruled out. And then good old Instagram. I'm just like, you know, things pop up on your feed. And I saw, I came across this page, and it was called Life by Alyssa. And I just kept, one post caught my attention, and I was like, oh, that's what I go through, but I've never told anybody that. then I kept reading her page and learning all these things. And again, I felt like this is me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so she recommended a book called The Highly Sensitive Person by Dr. Elaine Aron. I ordered it right away.
Yeah.
I'm going through it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I felt like this person wrote a book about me.
Amazing, hey? Like, what does that do for you when you feel like this person you think this book is about me? Like, what does that mean for you?
I'm like, this is it. This is what I've been searching for. And now I know what it is. I'm going to read everything and learn everything about it in order for me to help myself.
Yeah.
And this is very new for me.
Yeah.
I would say about 6 months.
Right.
So I'm learning more and more about it and I am super excited because I've already made changes in my life.
Right.
To live in this world as a highly sensitive person.
Yeah.
And be able to thrive in this world that is not built for an HSP.
That's right. Yeah.
And the few changes I have made have really decreased the situations I was going through.
And some of those things are talking about managing sensory and environment and social settings and, and when we say environment, we're talking about noise and all that. I'm wondering if you would be willing to come back soon and if we can unpack that a little bit more, because I have like so many questions and I'm hoping that so do others who are listening to this. And others that might even want to contribute to this or maybe are learning about it as well. I'm wondering if you'd be willing to come back and talk a little bit more about what doors that's open for you and how you're at this next place making sense of some of these things and what does that mean for you?
I would love to. I would be so honored to come back and talk about it, because if I didn't know, imagine how many people out there are suffering with a certain symptoms.
Yeah.
That there's a explanation for.
Yeah. And isn't that what we're looking for?
Yes.
To make us feel, I know you didn't want to use a word, but we use it, less crazy.
Yes.
Right? We feel like we're unique individuals that are experiencing this thing that we're going through, and makes us sometimes feel isolated, which can make us feel like the crazy word.
Yes.
And you're like, holy crap, learning about this is helping you understand how to walk into a social setting, understand how to dim the lights, something as simple as that. Learning about even certain foods and sounds, and even for people that have experienced trauma, for some highly sensitive people, watching gory, violent kind of movies can really trigger something for them. And they can't shut the lights off for the rest of the day, essentially. And some of you might be listening thinking, what? So we're probably recommending people go read up about it, and maybe we can come back and talk a little bit more soon.
I would love to.
Yeah. So I just want to, start and end with the thank you. I can't believe our time is coming to an end. I'm hoping that we can sit down again soon. But honestly, Meena, I really want to thank you today for coming on and being so vulnerable to share what life has been like for you, how life's treated you, and how you've bounced back. And every day is part of that learning process that you're going through, and you keep bouncing back. And I'm very grateful to have a friend like you in my corner, and I'm hoping that today others listening might feel, less isolated and more connected. And for those of you that are listening, I just want to thank you as well. We had our launch recently, and you guys really have shown me a lot of love and support. And to me, that's a sign that we want to keep doing this. So I really hope to keep hearing from all of you feedback and what you like, what you don't, what you hope for. Like I said before, we're learning and doing this together. Yeah. We're growing together. So reach out to me. You can reach me at info@mfupodcast.com. You can also reach me on Instagram at mfupodcast. Until then, have a great day. Thank you, everybody, for listening. And again, Meena, I love you, buddy. I'm so glad you're here.
I love you, too. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. This is amazing. This is amazing. Love you so much.
Love you, too, buddy.